Hi everybody, welcome to Chapter 7 in our DuFour textbook, which is going to focus on ensuring effective instruction. So remember, this chapter is going to give you this broader way to look at effective instruction and rate it on scale models, the same way that the last chapter did. I'm going under the assumption that we're going to just look at this as a bigger idea, bigger picture. If it's something you want to study further, you can. I want you to look at this as ways that we can improve instruction so that it can offer high levels of capability and high levels of capacity for everybody in an organization. So when you are engaging in any sort of instructional improvement, there has to be actual evidence that the students learned something. You can say, well, I think the students learned, or it seems to me that the students learned, but without actual evidence that supports student learning, you have a major problem in your professional learning community. And I want you all to think about that and also kind of think about what that could look like and honestly what we don't want it to look like. One of the examples Marzano said was that, a doctor says the operation was a success, but the patient died. In our world, that's not successful. You have to know whether or not actual learning took place, the students learned, and there was something that was evident in reflective that said, we know that the students learned because of A, B, and C. So we know that teachers working collaboratively is not something new. This is common throughout everything that we've looked at. It's going to continue to look at ways that teachers work collaboratively looking through lessons. And it's a big part of PLCs, and it's a big part of a lot of the work we're going to be doing in this program. In Japan, this is part of all school improvement, but I argue in org theory that we are a loosely coupled system in the United States, and we don't permit this approach. Professional learning communities should also be used to plan lessons, not necessarily just to look at data. We're going to be looking at lesson studies within a PLC, specifically looking at the categories of information, mental procedures, and psychomotor procedures. We'll have rubrics or scales that are presented in the book in ways we can make our lessons look like that. If you want to visit this on your own, once again, I encourage it, and it's something that you can do on your own during your own time. So, when you are looking at basic information, can the students gain an understanding or a basic overview of something? Try to make sure that you preview the content and make sure that you know what the students understand and don't understand about it before the lesson takes place. You want to make sure that they can represent the information in linguistic and non-linguistic ways. So if you're having the students draw a picture or do something like that, this is something that's encouraged in the Marzano approach. But you also want students to reflect on their own learning as well. So I know in undergraduate, you've learned about this notion of chunking a lesson. Chunking a lesson is basically taking content that's huge and putting it into these small little pieces and small little components so that students can understand it. Students should be able to remember it. It shouldn't be taxing on their short-term memories, because you should know what the students already know about the topic really before you break the information down. That's why you question them in advance. If you can figure out if the students have a basic understanding of something they might have learned about in 5th grade and revisiting it in 7th, and you know there's a stopping point, you give them the refresher, then you can chunk that information to allow for higher level learning and higher extension. So scaffolding, you've learned, once again, this was another big part of your undergraduate education programs. You've heard the name Vygotsky a million times, and if you haven't, Google him, Wikipedia him, you need to remember who Vygotsky is. Vygotsky used this notion of scaffolding when you organize instruction in a way that one chunk is linked to the next point so that there's this logical connection between chunks. If the students have a disconnect, the teacher should intervene and present a different perspective that's going to better the students and better their opportunity to learn. So finally, you have to represent content. The students have to synthesize what they've learned and be able to demonstrate to everybody, yes, I know this, I've learned it. So I'm going to show you ways that our textbook suggests we can do this linguistically and non-linguistically. So linguistically, one of the easiest things to do is have the students write a summary, write an outline, write individual notes, and that's the lowest level to show that they've done it. So it puts it on the students and it gives them the lowest level of demonstrating, yes, I understood this, and this is how I showed content mastery. Non-linguistic ways are things like graphic organizers. Sure, there's writing involved in a graphic organizer, but we're laying out the writing for the students so they can be comfortable with it. We could have them draw a sketch or a pictograph. We could let them physically act out what they've learned or need to know. Anything else related to design or drawing that could possibly assess information. So one of the things that you can do is have students think about what they've learned about. What was the most significant thing they learned? What do they want to learn more about? What are they still wondering about? I was a firm believer in early childhood classrooms about exit cards in 3rd and 4th grade, where if the students learned something or they wanted to learn something, I had them fill out an exit card and write specifically what was the thing that they learned, what do they need more information on, and the teacher should review them, and it's a good way to collect data. I mean, it's a very appropriate approach. For higher level content, these are your things that are your score 4.0 materials. These are comparison, classification, error analysis, inductive inference, and deductive inference. We'll go over each one of these. So comparison tasks ask the students to show how something is similar and different from information that has not been presented in class. And the best way that you can do this is to relate a task to real life. If you can have a student take a learning concept that they learned in biology and say, well, what would this look like on your fish at home? What would this look like on your dog at home? It gives the students the chance to represent situations they're already familiar with. You could have them classify things into groups. One of the things that our textbook suggested was you could do this with the amendments. You could have students organize amendments into a few categories, explain what the amendments particularly could look like, and defend why some are placed in specific categories and why others aren't. So error analysis is a lot more complicated for students. I have found error analysis to be considerably challenging, because it's when you basically present a student with an error and ask them to find out why the error is there and explain why the error is there. Students get thrown off by this, and they need practice on this. So it is a higher level skill, and if you're going to use it, I would encourage you practicing it a few times. So in inductive inference, it's basically taking something that you've learned and being able to generalize it for different content in class. So if the students learned about the nervous system of a dog, could they apply the same logic to the nervous system of a cat, a fish, a monkey, another animal? What would be different? What would be the same? Deductive is when you're making predictions and defending them based on rules that have been established. So some students may be asked to predict what changes to the Constitution would look like and how that would look at the Senate and if the House of look based on the way that the Senate and the House of Representatives are structured. What would it be? What would the outcomes be? So mental procedures are organized into processes and skills. When you're looking at processes, these are the ways that skills interact with each other. Objectives are presented at the skill level. So the processes are looking at skill A and skill B interacting with each other, and the objectives are specific to one skill. So, introductory lessons for mental procedures. Organize the students into small groups, have them preview the content together, and talk to each other about what they know and what they don't know and what they want to learn more about. I like the idea of using outlines and graphic organizers because occasionally a student will look at that and say, hey, I don't know much about this. Maybe this procedure can help me learn a little bit more about it. So, higher level mental procedures are when students can take a concept and create something new with it. If students were good in art and they had a shading skill that they were doing using black and white and doing grayscale, what if you gave them it in color form and had them go down the spectrum of the colors? So they've read about it, they've practiced it in black and white, and now they're going to reconceptualize the same skill in color form. It wasn't addressed in class, but can they take it and can they apply it? Psychomotor procedures are very very simple to understand because these are basically the students execute a product, they get the opportunity to practice it, and they can demonstrate it the way that it was taught in class or in a different manner. That's your physical ed stuff, that's your music and movement. Those are all considered to be psychomotor. So those of you that are early childhood, you remember learning about the importance of psychomotor lessons in your classes. So the instructional rounds model is something that's supported in our textbook, where teachers and coaches go to classrooms, look at practices, and they suggest looking at other work from Marzano to see the procedure. We have people that are instructional coaches that are going through our program and that believe in this notion and this model of instructional rounds. I've said this multiple times in the master's level class, but it's pivotal that nothing in this process should be used for evaluation. The teacher should not be given direct feedback from all of the observers that come in, especially if they're coming in teams, unless they ask for it. The team should try to put together comments and send it back as a team in a way to benefit the students. So when you have an instructional rounds group, you're going to have you're going to have groups that are small in numbers, normally 3 to 5 teachers at a time. It's probably going to be an instructional coach, a team teacher, and a lead teacher. If an administrator is a part of the instructional round procedure, they have to make sure that the teachers know that this is not part of their evaluation. It's done to improve their practice, and it's done to give them the opportunity to just get better in their practice and offer suggestions for feedback. One of the key things of it is to say, these are the instructional strategies that are going on in the classroom. The teachers need to be non-obtrusive, they need to sit in the back of the classroom, and they need to ensure that what they're doing does not impact instruction. So when the round is over and they've gone to as many classrooms as they're supposed to be going, it's pivotal that they reflect together on their experiences. The leader will review the purpose, explain how the dialogue is supposed to look. Unless the teacher asked for feedback, it shouldn't be given to them. It should be done in just a narrative form to all teachers that were involved in the procedure. And every teacher needs to ensure confidentiality, that anything that they learned, they're not going to share. They're not going to share with others, and that it's only going to be discussed at the team. That's easier said than done. The questions really that outline what was gained from instructional rounds are, what instructional practices will I continue to use because I saw other teachers employing them effectively? What strategies that I currently use can I re-examine? What have I not used but will now attempt because I saw them used by other teachers? What part of our lesson plan worked well? What part of our team lesson plan did not work, and what can we do to change it? Those are kind of the big questions that relate to instructional rounds. When you're trying to improve team-based instruction, there is still individualized skill. I can't stress that enough. There are some people that have it and some people that don't have it. There are people that are natural teachers. Even though these lessons are designed together and you're working collaboratively, how I teach something is different than how somebody else teaches it. Our individual personalities do add to that whole notion of how students learn. So let teachers express their individuality, add their own personality. Don't turn it into something that's monotonous, because then they lose their creativity and freedom. So this is the end of new content in the DuFour book. Nothing else in the DuFour book really is new. There are 2 chapters. The next one is responding when kids don't learn, and the other one is a more in-depth look at what general leadership looks like. When we continue with this book, we'll discuss them, but for now, that's kind of the end of the new content. So as always, if there's anything I can do to help, please let me know. Thank you.